Hello everyone, back tuning in today's second video. Going to have a look at the weather next 10 to 14 days for today's second video. That's going to take us to around the 10th of August, so we'll be able to extend out beyond that with the extended GFS and ECM ensembles very much around a couple of weeks. And we'll have a look at the CFS-B2 at the end of the video for the next 4 weeks. Take us pretty much to the end of the month. So bring an update what's going on in the tropical Atlantic, and we're also going to bring an update with the central temperature for July as well. And yeah, going to be a bit of an extended look ahead. So I hope you find it interesting and informative. Weekend forecast has just been released, so that's a weekend look ahead. As always, on a Saturday, a detailed weekend forecast. So have a look at that when you have done with this video. Perhaps got Terry Scoley's August forecast coming up for you tonight at GavsWeatherVids.com. That'll be around 7 o'clock. And I'll talk you through what's happening tomorrow at the end of the video. Right then, let's get on with it again. Start off in the tropical Atlantic, as I say. So we've got 3 areas of interest right now. So let's deal with them one by one. So we've got 10. We've got 10 over here. Let's see what National Hurricane Center is saying about 10. That is Tropical Depression 10, giving maximum sustained winds of 35 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 1,008 millibars, moving northwestwards at 16 miles per hour. Very, very close to Cabo Verde Islands. Let's click in on 10 and see what's going on with it. So it doesn't look like this is going to do a great deal. It's going to go to post-tropical depression very shortly, and then that should be the end of it. By tomorrow it should be gone, so we don't need to worry too much about 10, I don't think. I've also got this yellow X just here. Let's see what they're saying about this one. It's Disturbance 1 with a 10% chance of cyclone formation in the next 48 hours, but a 60% chance of cyclone formation in the next 5 days. National Hurricane Center are saying a westward moving tropical wave located about 600 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands continues to produce disorganized showers and thunderstorms. Environmental conditions are forecast to become more conducive for development in a day or two, and a tropical depression could form early next week. The system is forecast to turn northwest and then northward over the western Atlantic, passing north of the Leeward Islands through the middle of next week. So it looks like it's going to do something a little bit like that, perhaps. But we shall see. And then, of course, we've got Isaiah. So we've got Hurricane Isaiah just there. Hurricane Isaiah, it's a Category 1 hurricane, giving maximum sustained winds of 85 miles per hour with a minimum central pressure of 987 millibars, and it's moving northwestwards at 12 miles per hour. Clicking on Isaiah, so these are the latest sort of points about it. Number 1, hurricane conditions and dangerous storm surge are expected in portions of the Bahamas through today, Saturday, and hurricane warnings are in effect. Point number 2 is that hurricane conditions are expected along portions of the Florida East Coast late Saturday and Saturday night, so late tonight, and a hurricane warning is in effect. Preparations to protect life and property should be rushed to completion. Point number 3, dangerous storm surge is possible along the Florida East Coast from Jupiter Inlet to Ponte Vedra Beach, where water rises of 2 to 4 feet above ground level are possible along the immediate coastline and adjacent waterways. Residents in those areas should follow advice given by the local emergency officials. Point number 4, Isaiah will produce heavy rain and potentially life-threatening flash flooding and urban flooding, especially to low-lying and poorly drained areas across South and East Central Florida and across the Carolinas to the mid-Atlantic. Minor river flooding is possible across portions of the Carolinas into Virginia, Virginia early next week. Point number 5 is there is a risk of impacts from winds, heavy rainfall and storm surge spreading along much of the US East Coast through early next week, and interest there should monitor the progress of Isaiah and updates to the forecast. Let's click on the warnings and cone images, and we can see that we have Hurricane Isaiah in the Bahamas at the moment, going to move off the east coast of Florida over this weekend into early next week. Going to go down to tropical storm if the forecast is correct, somewhere around South Carolina, and then carry on up the east coast, finishing up as a post-tropical storm somewhere around Newfoundland by Thursday. So yeah, major impacts for eastern parts of America, and then of course we have that other disturbance area that we will be keeping an eye on through the course of next week. Will that become another tropical storm and hurricane? We shall see. Okay, so central temperature is in for July. Now it's in and confirmed with Hadley at UK Met Office. So this is the CT page at GavsWeatherVids, showing every month's CT all the way back to January 1659. Central temperature is the longest and most consistent temperature record anywhere on Earth. Though, of course, the further back you go, the more unreliable it will get. Right, we scroll down through the centuries and the decades, and we come down to 2020, just here. So that's 2020 just there, and we see that July 2020 came in with a central temperature at 15.7, 15.7. 15.7 was our CT confirmed for July 2020. We have had our first cooler than average month of the year, despite the fact that the final day of the month was like the third hottest day on record. Actually, overall, the month as a whole came out below average. There's quite a substantial downwards correction, I think, as we expected, due to the fact that minima had been running too high through the month. So it's actually 1 degree below the 81 to 2010 average. The 81 to 2010 July average is 16.7, so it's a full degree below that. The 61 to 1990, only 0.3 of a degree below that. So, I mean, it's still a little bit cooler than average against 61 to 1990, but particularly against 81 to 2010, it was quite a substantially cooler than average month. And of course, that follows on from all months through this year so far being warmer than average. January, February, March, April, May and June all had above average temperatures. So yes, July was our first cooler than average month of the year. As expected, it was the coolest July since 2012 as well. So we've had our coolest July for 8 years. Again, despite the fact that the last day of the month was the third hottest day on record. So 2012 comes in, July 2012 comes in with a CT of 15.5. So not quite as cool as that, but cooler than the previous coolest since 2012, which was 2015. That came in at 15.9. So as expected, as anticipated, we've talked about this in videos, we came in with a CT somewhere between 2015 and 2012. We have our coolest July since 2012. Not as cool as 2011. That came in at 15.2. And the last time, somebody else remember the last time was, we had a July CT under 15, and that was a very, very long time ago now. That was all the way back in the 1980s. July 1988 had a central England temperature then of 14.7. That was the last time I had a July CT underneath 15 degrees. That's an atrocious summer, of course, 1988, and August 1988 was also very cool at 15.2. But yeah, it's been a pretty cool month this July, despite the fact that we ended it on a very, very hot note. Of course, we now wait and see where things are going to go for August. So let's move on with that, and we're going to have a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly flow charts for the next 7 to 10 days from Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF on the top here, and the GFS is on the bottom. So 500 millibars is an area in absolute high pressure, low pressure, up and moved around by jet stream running above. Red extrapolates high pressure, blue to low pressure. So in the 7 to 10 day time frame, which takes us into the second week of August, basically, the ECM has this ridge of above average height sitting over to the east of the country, trough of below average heights out to the northwest. Flow and projection are going to be doing something like that. That will be placing us under dry and hot conditions potentially as we go into the second week of August. The GFS is very similar, but it's a little bit weaker with the ridge. The GFS does have the ridge over and to the east of the country, but just a little bit more influence from low pressure in the Atlantic means it's just slightly flatter. The flow is just slightly flatter. And a little bit more Atlantic based. So out of the two, I think the ECM is the hottest, driest solution. And the GFS is, the GFS is still going to be very warm as well, too hot. But perhaps just a little bit more unsettled with the GFS. Perhaps just suggesting a little bit more in way of thunder and not quite as hot, not quite as much of a southerly influence with the GFS in the 7 to 10 day time frame. These are the GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks for London. So the red line is a 30-year upper air temperature average for London, starting round average at the moment, but temperatures are still sort of dropping away from yesterday. Actually, the drop in the upper air temperatures hasn't yet completed, and so by tomorrow, actually, we're going to be cooler than average. And then we have like 2, 3, 4 days of cooler than average conditions coming up, like through to the middle of next week. So if you don't like the hot weather, then make most of the next few days. So around Wednesday, Thursday onwards, temperatures then starting to lift up. It's a little bit more gradual than the lift up in temperature that we have just been through. So it takes a little while for it to happen. But eventually, by next weekend, we are going pretty hot with upper air temperatures going back pretty close to 20 degrees at 850 HPA again. And then there's a slow sort of decline away. Again, this does not look as dramatic either way as what we've just been through. So you know what we just went through is that we saw a very, very dramatic lift up. Not quite as dramatic as that, but sort of to get the idea. We had a very dramatic lift up and then did something like that. Whereas this is more of a gradual, lift up in the temperature. It takes a few days for temperature to lift up, and then it's more of a gradual drop in temperature as well. So it's going to be a little bit different to like the heat surge that we've just had. But for a while, around next weekend, in particular 8th, 9th of August, it is getting really quite hot with the GFS ensembles, and then a gradual slip down in the temperature as we go up towards the middle part of the month. Precipitation-wise, a lot of dry weather to come. As it's cooler, there will be a few showery bursts coming through, not particularly wet, a few showery bursts. Then it goes pretty dry, really, from the middle of next week onwards through into the second week of the month, maybe a little bit more unsettled by mid-August, but of course that's a really long way off. These are how the temperature anomalies are looking from the 1st through to the 9th of August, generally warmer than average for those parts of the country. Precipitation anomalies from the 1st to the 9th of August, a little bit wetter than average Scotland, Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England, mainly drier than average for the rest of England and Wales. Here's today's wind flow chart from earthnullschool.net. So we've changed the air mass today. You'll remember yesterday the wind direction was coming up from a southerly direction. So we've drawn the air up from the south, and that's the reason it was so hot, because the air was originating from North Africa and Spain. Cold front pushed through yesterday evening, cleared all that heat and humidity out of the way, and winds have now turned into west, coming from a much cooler Atlantic source and being driven in by this area of low pressure, but is actually centred around Iceland, feeding in those westerly winds from off the Atlantic. If you have a look at the temperature overlay, we can see that again it has cooled down significantly compared to yesterday, with those hot temperatures being pushed over into the continent. We're bringing a much cooler and fresher air mass from off the Atlantic, albeit it's still pretty warm in the southeast corner because it takes a while to get the heat out of the cities in particular. Okay, so this is how the UK Met is looking for Tuesday. So on Tuesday, we're still in a relatively fresh westerly flow, although I suppose humidity could start to increase a little bit on Tuesday, but generally still going to be rather cool and showery on Tuesday. Pretty unsettling to Wednesday as well, particularly for northern western parts of the country through Thursday and Friday. That's when we start to see the high pressure begin to take over once again. So by Friday, we've got high pressure sitting over and to the east of the country. It's turning drier and significantly warmer through most parts of the country. That's as far as we go with the UK Met to Friday 7th of August. GFS looks like that. So on Tuesday, yes, it's rather showery and still a little on the cool side, particularly for northern areas. A bit unsettled for Wednesday too. Then through Thursday and Friday, we have the high pressure building to the south and the east of the country, drawing up these much warmer southerly winds. Remember, we did see on the 500 millibar high quantity flow chart that the GFS is a little bit weaker with the high pressure. So as early as Saturday, we are starting to suggest a thundery development here. Low pressure beginning to develop from both the west and the south, possibly increasing risk of thunderstorms, although the upper air temperatures do look hot for Saturday across most parts of the country. But as we go through that weekend of the 8th and the 9th of August, an increasing threat of thunder with this GFS run as low pressure begins to develop very close to the country. Moving up towards day 10, we actually look quite unsettled. Still probably quite warm, but quite unsettled with this GFS run, and an increasing risk of thundery rain, thunderstorms or longer spells of thundery rain breaking out probably. A more extended range with this GFS run, eventually we go into something looking really quite cool and a little bit autumnal by the middle part of August. But I'm not sure the GFS is performing terribly well at the moment. It does seem to be chopping and changing from run to run, and I'm not sure it's got sort of next weekend nailed down at the moment. So anything beyond that, I think, is fraught with danger. GM is looking like this. So again on Tuesday, rather cool and showery, and those cool and showery conditions continue to Wednesday, maybe Thursday and Friday. Here comes a high pressure developing to the east of the country, drawing wind back up from the south. Once again, GM has been very, very consistent. The GM has been very consistent about this. Now we go through to next weekend with Saturday the 8th of August, again drawing up these hot southerly winds, suggestion of a bit of a thundery low maybe developing over France. Upper air temperatures do look very hot. The 20 Celsius isotherm is coming back in across England in particular. There it is, I'll highlight it as we go through into Saturday. So, yeah, that could well get temperatures back into the mid to upper 30s Celsius if that came off. But we go through to Sunday the 9th of August, and there's a growing risk of thunderstorms breaking out then. And then we get through to day 10, and we're sort of still trying to hang on to the ridge, but probably within that there's a thundery system, I think. So increasingly the GEM is moving towards a thundery scenario around days 8, 9 and 10. And then the ECM looks like this. So again, we look rather cooler and showery for Tuesday. Wednesday is quite wet and windy, potentially up in the north. Then through Thursday and Friday, that's when the high pressure takes over across the country and to our east. Winds pull back up into the south. That starts to draw the hot air back up from the south. Once again, that's Saturday. Looking potentially very hot a week today across many parts of the country, as the upper air temperatures they do look really hot indeed. But 20 Celsius isotherm is across the northern parts of France there, coming in towards the Channel. So it's not far away at all, that 20 Celsius isotherm. Maybe the suggestion of a bit of thunder as we go through to Sunday the 9th of August. Still pretty hot with those upper air temperatures. ECM up to day 10, which is Tuesday the 11th of August, generally keeping things quite warm, but probably suggesting thundery conditions dropping in from the northwest. There's probably some sort of trough here for this allegation in the isobars that's moving in from off the North Atlantic. So maybe going a bit thundery with the ECM by day 10. But generally, the ECM, I think out of the three, the ECM is the one that's hanging on to the hottest, driest conditions for longest. The GFS is the most unsettled, turning things quickly, thundery. The GM is probably the hottest of the three, but the GM also goes quite thundery eventually too. This is the rainfall forecast based on that ECM run from Tometeo.com. So, showery in the north and west over the next few days. Very little rain getting through to the southeast corner, but there will be 1 or 2 showers there. Most of what showers there are will be in the north and west. Rather wet and windy around the middle part of the week across Scotland and Northern Ireland. That tries to get down into the south, but sort of kind of fizzles out. And then going to the second half next week, of course, then the high pressure is taking over to the east of the country. Winds are turning to the south, turning hotter, and we're also turning dry across most parts of the country. Western Scotland and Northern Ireland having a little bit of rain there, but otherwise, this next weekend, otherwise, most places dry and hot. Just maybe as we move up towards day 10, the suggestion of some thunderstorms breaking out. So yeah, by day 10, the ECM is possibly flirting with the idea of a thundery breakdown. So by the 11th of August, things perhaps going a little bit thundery. These are the options on the table within the ECM ensembles today for day 10, which gets us to the 11th of August via the Icelandic Met Office. We have 21 members of the ECM ensembles with a Scandinavian high, and they're drawing in a very warm east or southeasterly wind. Might be a bit thundery, but certainly looking very warm or hot. 17 with high pressure again over Scandinavia, drawing in like a southerly southeasterly flow. There is lower pressure out to west, so that's where we could trigger some thunderstorms from. 9 with high pressure over Scandinavia again. So just, they're all sort of going in the same direction, really, these options. Just very slightly and subtly different with the exact placement of the ridge. But they're all basically going for some sort of high pressure towards Scandinavia, really, by day 10. And drawing in like an east or southeasterly, but with low pressure to the west-southwest, possibly a little bit further. This one, for just here, a little bit different. The high pressure is basically centred right over top of the country, but only 4 doing that. Most of those options are going for a Scandinavian high, but just slightly, slightly differing in the placement of that Scandinavian high. In 2 weeks' time, these are the options that we've got. Gets us to the 16th of August, into the just into the second half of the month, actually. 27 members of the ECM ensembles, probably with some sort of shallow trough coming through the country. So that would be cooler and more unsettled. Remember the GFS extending is going for something a little bit cooler and more unsettled around middle of August. The those 27 ECM ensemble members probably agreeing with that to some degree as well. 17 with a trough of low pressure over Scandinavia, a ridge out to our west and southwest. That will be like a cooler and more showery west-northwesterly flow. And then 7 with high pressure up towards Greenland, Iceland, low pressure down to the southwest. So yeah, that could be a little bit more unsettled as well. So maybe by the middle part of August, we could be going into something quite a lot more unsettled. But of course, that's 2 weeks away. It's a very, very long way out. Finally, the CFSV2, these are 500 millibar heights breaking down to weekly periods. The first weekly period is going to take us from the 1st to the 7th of August. The coming week with low pressure to the north, high pressure building up from the southwest. So starting cooler and showery, turning drier and warmer later. We go through to week 2. This is the 8th to the 14th of August. High pressure vein centred just to our east will be drawing up a hot southerly or southeasterly wind. That looks like it's a hot and dry second week of August. Week 3 is the 15th to 21st of August. Be above average heights and extending from like Germany to Greenland. Low pressure just here. This could be like a breakdown period. Maybe starting off hot and dry and then turning increasingly thundery as the low pressure comes in from off Atlantic. Something like that could be going on. By the time we get through to week 4, quite a substantial change to the end of August. This is 22nd, 28th of August. Low pressure then is dominating weather just out to our west and bringing in like a westerly flow. High pressure up towards Greenland, so jet stream will be pushed southwards. And yeah, so we end August there on a little bit of an autumnal type note, dare I say it. What a strange August that would be. Right then, so that's it for your videos for today. So essentially we're looking at cooler, fresh conditions for the next couple of days, and then we're on into something warmer from the second half of next week. Could get quite hot by next weekend. All will be revealed in the coming days. We'll be keeping you updated about that in the videos at GavsWeatherVids. That's it for your videos for today. We are going to have Terry Scully's autumn forecast, August forecast I should say, on GavsWeatherVids.com tonight around 7 o'clock. o'clock. Tomorrow we've got our next batch of autumn analogs coming up. GavsWeatherVids sitting around, and we'll be live streaming from 6 o'clock. In the live stream tomorrow, we're going to show you can sips for winter of 2020-21 and the CFS V2 winter 2020-21 as well. But for today's videos, that's all for now, and thanks for watching.